Indeed, for what is currently the flagship of the range, a motorcycle that falls into the so-called native A2 license segment, Mondial has truly dared to push hard on the equipment and especially on the design and aesthetics. Feel free to look around as much as you want, but rest assured that in this segment you won't find anything as advanced. Before we start, a quick recap on the Mondial Piega 452. For those who don't know, Mondial is one of the many historic brands that belong to the Italian motorcycling heritage. It was founded in 1948 and raced, bringing to victory riders like Carlo Ubbiali and Tarquinio Provini. The spirit of those Mondial bikes is what FB Mondial wants to instill in the new motorcycles, with the Piega 452 currently representing the pinnacle. The engine is a 449cc inline twin-cylinder with a 270 degrees firing order. The performance is top of the category, meaning you can't get any more horsepower than this. Its 48 at 9,500 revolutions per minute and torque is top of the class, 39 nanometers at 7,600 revolutions per minute. Made at 7,600 revolutions per minute, in this segment, peak horsepower is limited by law. The power-to-weight ratio makes the difference, and Mondial has good cards to play with a weight of 176 kilograms, one of the best in the segment. Other features? Well, it's impossible not to notice the spectacular single-sided swing arm with a lenticular wheel, which, by the way, can also be removed. A very lightweight single-sided swing arm at 3.6 kilograms, which helps produce one of the most compact wheelbases in the 1000 category at 355 mm, second only to the super compact one of the Aprilia RS 457. Simple suspensions, but here we are in the average. The 41 mm inverted fork lacks adjustments. The monoshock can only be adjusted preload, but it uses a progressive linkage, which is uncommon. Good stuff regarding brakes and tires, a 320 mm floating disc with a Brembo radial mounted caliper, and then the tire size is large. We usually have the 120-150 combination, but on the Piega 452 we have a 120-70 front and a 160-60 rear. This indicates that in terms of handling, this bike is serious. Okay, here we are on the Mondial Piega 452. Let's see what we discover when we get on board this naked bike with a 450 twin-cylinder engine. First of all, a 5-inch colored TFT display. Very clear indeed, I must say, although some indications are a bit small, but it's fine. Anodized handlebar, so that's good. And backlit switches that even higher displacement naked bikes don't have. Let's say all the indications are controlled from the left switch with a command that we're used to having on some bikes from competition as well. With set button, you immediately access riding modes. This bike has 2 riding modes. It doesn't change throttle response, but changes traction control and ABS settings. We have Piega mapping, which keeps ABS and traction control on, and racing mapping to be used presumably on track. It requires double confirmation to turn off ABS and traction control. Let's go back to our main menu. Other things you can do include, such as, for instance, changing the display graphics with screen style and always confirming. This is essentially the second style, once again always confirmed with the set. Here is basically speaking about what's on this second screen. As you can see, indications remain more or less exactly same. Temperature readings are there, a long time elapsed odometer reading, basic indications, tachometer, speedometer, gearing gauge, so on. Another interesting and unique feature is the ability to easily and quickly change the display color to either light or dark, depending entirely and completely on your personal preference. So, besides the style, you can effortlessly and seamlessly switch from white to black based on what you like. The instrumentation is quite comprehensive and very readable. Right now, we are in full sunlight, and it is still quite legible. The backlit controls, which I have already mentioned, all contribute to an overall sense of quality and craftsmanship. I also want to point out the two adjustable levers, which I always like, both the brake and the clutch, both adjustable in distance. They are not the same levers. Here, maybe a small step forward could be made. I would say that's basically everything you can see, and now we can go test the bike, essentially. The seating area is nice and quite comfortable. There are some distinct edges, but you can fit your knees well. Those with longer knees than mine have adequate space and don't have any annoying contact. The seat is nicely padded, well supported and extremely comfortable, but I have to say that I was on the saddle throughout the entire day and didn't find absolutely any issues whatsoever with it being too hard or uncomfortable in any way, so in the end, I wholeheartedly approve of the ergonomics. I appreciate the adjustable double shocks, as I already mentioned, and there are very few vibrations, almost none. The adjustable double shocks are a standout feature that I truly appreciate. They provide an incredibly smooth and comfortable ride, significantly reducing vibrations to almost none. Speaking of the engine, for me it's the best part of the bike. I had the opportunity to test it on the S450 SR, but the conditions were less than ideal due to the rain and the track setting. Testing it again on this bike, which is notably lightweight, has been a revelation. This engine makes a great impression. It is perfectly balanced with a good pull at low revs, so you don't have to seek high revs to get good performance. In fact, today I was always traveling at a maximum of 8,000 to 9,000 revolutions per minute, and then it extends and extends well, decisively, even if the push slightly diminishes. And then the noise is always present. You have it in your ears constantly when you ride, adding to the overall experience. There are no motorcycle models of this displacement with all this distinctive character. I don't want to sound blasphemous, but in some very specific aspects, when you ride with just a bit of throttle and it rumbles a little, it somewhat simulates or resembles the sound of the Street Fighter V 4, absolutely. So really, from this point of view, Mondial has indeed done an absolutely good job. They managed to bring out a distinctive character from the native A2 bike that no other bike currently has. I also want to add that I found the throttle management to be very good. So absolutely, the mappings are spot on, meaning the throttle calibration is accurate. There's a bit of a true on-off feel, but with a cable throttle, it's hard to do better than this lately. So, from this point of view, it's an absolutely mature bike. Speaking of the chassis, the bike is incredibly short, remarkably compact, and also very light. The declared weight is not fake. The bike is truly light and zips through curves with great speed and incredibly agile. In terms of setup, it is indeed very firm, maybe a bit too much. Overall, I would have preferred approximately 20% less. It is not an uncomfortable bike, nor is it unbalanced, in the sense that the setup is rigid both front and rear, so the bike remains very sport-oriented. It might be the most sporty in this segment. It's not that I have to say I'm sorry, but if the fork worked a little more deeply, if in the second part of the travel it was just a bit softer, tending to sink a bit more deeply, it would help to give a bit more feedback in certain situations, a little bit more noticeably, clearly. Actually, even on rough and bumpy roads, here going up the steep and winding roads of the Lecco and Como valleys, I didn't find anything particularly unpleasant or out of place. Even on potholes, the bike remains quite consistent with its setup, but everything stays quite rigid and firm. This is somewhat Mondial's intention to position the Piega in an area of extreme sportiness that isn't covered by the competition. In my opinion, the fork might need a bit of a review, especially in the second part of its travel. It's as if there's a bit of oil inside. It starts off quite well, then it stiffens up a bit, becoming more rigid. In the second part of the curve, I would like a fork that continues to compress all the way to the end of its travel, providing better handling. This is because obviously when the asphalt is smooth and flowing, there are no problems. However, when there are some small potholes or the asphalt is damp, as we found this morning, having a fork that works all the way to the end helps to give a bit more feeling on the front tire, enhancing control and stability. For instance, this morning, while navigating through a series of tight bends and encountering unexpected bumps, the bike's performance remained consistent, but the rigidity of the fork was noticeable. This added stiffness, while beneficial on smooth roads, can be a bit challenging on uneven surfaces. Therefore, a fork that adapts better to these conditions would significantly improve the overall riding experience. On the other hand, where it falls short with the suspensions, the Piega makes up for it with the tires, which are more generous than what the competition offers in this segment. The 160/60th rear and the 120/70th front indeed provide a lot of support, a lot of shoulder to definitely rely on, and certainly give a great sense of grip and stability. So if the fork dives a little bit more, the front tire still continues to function effectively, and the result is that the front end never feels like it lacks support when entering a curve, which often happens with a 110 front tire in a stable manner. Regarding the brakes, the front is very good and performs exceptionally well. I like the power it provides, but I would have preferred a slightly softer pressure point to have a bit more feel and control. The rear brake works adequately, but you have to press quite hard to get the desired effect. Maybe a bit more braking power there wouldn't have been bad, mainly because when you need to brake, it does its job, but when you need to feather it to manage the cornering, you have to press a bit more than you'd like, which can be somewhat inconvenient. Overall, the braking system is reliable, but there is room for improvement, especially in terms of the rear brake's responsiveness and the front brake's pressure point. ABS, not bad, a bit of modulation and adjustments, but here the roads are quite rough, uneven and bumpy. And once the tire warmed up very well and properly, I didn't have any particular problems. Among other things, the race mapping, or racing mapping, essentially allows you to... It's not an engine mapping because the engine always delivers maximum power, the throttle response is always the same, but it's the mapping that enables you to disconnect, to disable both the traction control, which is still present, and the ABS. So if you want to have some fun with this bike, activate this racing mapping. In fact, ultimately, this mapping is designed for those who want to experience the full potential of the bike without any electronic aids. This is more or less everything I noted about the Mondial Piega 452. I have to say that in the end, the bike is pleasant. One last small point about the suspensions. Today I tried two motorcycles, the one Rodolfo used and the one I had. So the grey one and the black one that's here with me. And I have to say that this one, which is a bit more broken in and has covered a bit more distance in terms of suspension, especially the lemon, works a bit better even with the rear brake. In short, a bit of brake-in was necessary. The other one had very few kilometers and perhaps needed to loosen up a bit. Well, that's everything I noted down in my notebook about the Mondial Piega 452. As a first tip, I suggest you follow our social media because we might even invite you to join us for some tests. Also, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos. If you have any comments, questions, doubts or concerns about this motorcycle, leave them below in the comments, and I always respond to everyone. See you in the next video.